gonna give this a second just so people can hop in and say hello. But this is my first official stream at my new place. Welcome to my cozy little citadel in the beautiful city of Portland, Oregon. Y'all can't see it from here, but I have a desk for the first time, a proper desk. I'm so happy. I've never had something like this. I also have this swivelly little desk chair, which is super awesome. And it's just nice to have like a proper setup for streaming now. It's beautiful. I could not be happier with how this has turned out. So yeah. But what I want to do is, because I am between video editors at the moment, I thought, why not jump headfirst into the world of streaming and give it a shot, see what it's all about. So I thought, well, how do I start off if I'm going to, do this for the first time? What sort of topics should I cover for my grand introduction to the world of Twitch? And I thought, well, I am a trans woman. I have been transitioning for 2 years now, and I'm also an open atheist and anarcho-communist. So I was like, well, there are a lot of people who have already reacted to people like Ben Shapiro, companies like PragerU, The Blaze, Fox News. It's fairly standard for LeftTube at this point. But there's someone who caught my attention a few months ago. I didn't know who she was before this. But the longer I have learned about her and the more I've heard from her, the more I thought that this would kind of be the perfect person for me to tackle for my first stream, because she is especially controversial, and I am convinced is 100% a grifter. Now, if you're wondering who I'm talking about, I am going to be covering someone named Arielle Scarcella. Now, a lot of you know who this is, but for those of you who are uninformed, she is a YouTuber who has been active for like 10 years. So she's like an OG of YouTube. She is an out lesbian, and on her channel she talks about like a lot of queer issues, like safe sex, sexual issues, and that's fine. However, over the past few months, she has been making content that is overtly transphobic, and she tries to deny that she's being a transphobe. She claims that she's looking out for women's issues, but it's clear that the more you listen to her, that what she's doing is she's separating cis women from trans women, and she's trying to delegitimize the experiences of women like myself, but she's subtle about it. Under the Thunder, hey, how are you? Welcome to my Twitch channel. This is going to be ported over to YouTube after this, but I thought, why not take a crack at this and see what happens, But yeah, what I want us to do is we're going to react to 2 Arielle Scarcella videos tonight. And what I want to do is, I don't want to do just the standard reaction where like you're expressing your personal feelings over it. I actually want to break these videos down and show why what she's saying is so problematic. Because I think, not for the best reason. Hey, I'm glad you could make it too. I'm glad the stream won't be taken down, hopefully, after like 3 minutes. I'm like, okay, so for those of you who don't know, I tried doing this stream a few nights ago, and a troll commented one word, cringe, within 3 minutes of me starting, and 2 minutes later it was taken down. So I'm half convinced that it's the troll who took me down. I'm hoping. But I'm not one to give up. I wanted to do this again, to do this proper justice, because that is who I am. And also, I think we should just have fun. But yeah, I don't want to be like a lot of people who react to content where they're merely doing like a surface level reaction. I actually want to dig into why what she's saying is so problematic. Um, and we're going to start with a video called The Woke Left Says This Is a Woman, I Disagree. In the thumbnail, she does what a lot of right-wing people do, where she'll post an image of a very masked person or someone who is trans but doesn't put in the effort to pass. It's very much like what Blair White and other right-wing channels do, where they put the most extreme examples of the community up as an attempt to smear all of us and make it seem like we're all that way, which obviously wrong. But that's just the thumbnail of this video. Even before we've started, it's already incredibly problematic. But I'm not going to talk anymore. Let's get into the video and see what she has to say, shall we? Also, y'all let me know if the sound levels are okay. I'm doing this on OBS, and I think everything's good, but send me a comment if anything seems off, and I will fix it. But here we go.
Here we go. Another video that's potentially going to piss a lot of people off, but as a woman, I need to stand up for women and trans women, to be honest.
How many seconds are we in? 6 seconds. You hear what she just said? I want to stand up for women and trans women. It's subtle. And if you're not listening to what she's saying, you're not going to catch that. But this is something that a lot of transphobes, not just right-wingers do tend to be transphobic, but you see this sort of attitude in so many other places besides just the conservative wing of our political spectrum. What people like this try to do is whenever they say women and trans women, what that is implying is that trans women are not real women. Because notice she said first women. There was no descriptor in front of that. But then she says trans women. This is meant to separate us, to make it seem like there's this invisible barrier that will forever keep us separate from one another. That because I am trans, that because I was assigned one sex at birth, but I identify as the other, that because of the circumstances of my birth, I cannot and I will never be the gender I identify as. Again, this is very subtle transphobia, but you'll hear a lot of people say things like this. Trans women will never be here. No, exactly. Like, even whenever I was a kid, I wasn't a boy. I didn't understand how to be a boy because I'm not a boy. Nothing about maleness or being socialized as male ever made sense to me because I was just like, I don't think like that. I'm not comfortable with this. Like, why am I being told to act this way when it's not me? And this plays into what she's saying, where we can't just call ourselves women. There always has to be that trans descriptor to keep us apart. But let's continue.
So let's go. So apparently women are now formless voids according to the UN. This is a real tweet that went out the other day. Trans women are women at the end of the day. Every woman is a woman. Women are multifaceted, intergenerational, international. They are limitless, formless. Women are the world.
So she's trying to say this. Oh God, I hate it whenever conservative people do this, where someone uses a descriptor and the conservatives take in, they're just like, you use this word. Are you saying that they're all just this word? And it's like, no, sweetie, it's a metaphor. Do you not understand metaphors? Do you not understand poetic language? Why do you take everything literally? Whenever the UN says that they are limitless and formless, what they're trying to say by formless is that there's no one way to be a woman, that there's no one specific like feminine body. To be formless means that you can have a lot of forms, but all of those forms can still fit the descriptor of woman. But again, she's attacking this word that this organization used, and she's trying to make it seem like the UN wants to just separate woman from anything related to the real world, that woman can be quote unquote anything, which I know y'all have heard a lot of people try to make that claim, that people like myself are trying to redefine the term woman so that way it can mean literally anything, even though I'm like, the reason I'm comfortable in my identity now is because I have taken on characteristics and mannerisms and behaviors that suit me. I am a woman, therefore I'm going to take these concrete things on. I'm not making it formless. I am me. I'll never be Roman Erebus because of all the societal expectations that go along with masculinity that I will never live up to. No, and see, that's the biggest thing too, is that's actually how I feel as a trans woman. It's like there were a lot of stereotypes that I was expected to kind of conform to as a child, but I never wanted to conform to those things. But even like the societal expectations for trans women specifically, we're expected to be like hyper feminine. We're expected to like wear like very, very feminine clothing. We're expected to do lots of makeup. We're expected to have that like super cutesy girly personality. Even though that's not realistic for a lot of people, they're expected to pass perfectly and be super feminine in every way. That's not possible for a lot of trans women, and those societal expectations are incredibly harmful. And whenever Arielle attacks the UN, calling women formless, what the UN is trying to say is that we should free people from harmful cultural gender stereotypes so that way they can be more comfortable being themselves and they don't feel like they have to conform themselves to this wildly unrealistic standard, because people like me, if we don't fit that standard, then it makes us feel like we either aren't legitimate women or we won't be taken and seen as what we are by society. Like, think about trans women who start transitioning whenever they're like 50 or 60. A lot of them, just because of age, cannot pass stereotypically, but that's through no fault of their own. It's merely that they discovered who they were later on in life, and those cultural stereotypes end up harming them more than helping them, because culture still demands that it doesn't matter if you're older, you must fit this perfectly. And even then you get attacked for it, because then TERFs will say, oh, you're reinforcing stereotypes. No, see, that's the thing, is this is what TERFs do, is they essentially lock you in an endless loop, where if you choose not to pass traditionally, but you choose to simply embrace what you have, then you're not reinforcing gender norms. You can't be a real woman because you don't fit those stereotypes. But then you start trying to present yourself like I do, and suddenly, wait, I thought y'all wanted to abolish gender stereotypes, which is funny because TERFs sometimes talk about abolishing gender stereotypes too. So like, which is it? You can't have both. But let's continue. Wait, who is this? Who? Hang on. We're gonna do this. Purge! Thank you. Okay. User has been purged. How on earth do I make this message disappear? Please go away. Okay. The brainlet is gone. Let's continue.
This is from Aaron Phillip. I don't know who that is. Model and disability rights activist. Is there not a way to both recognize trans people but not call women and females formless? Also, I think the trans...
Yes. Tell women that they can present themselves however they want and that they're still women regardless. It's so easy. This is so simple. She's so close to getting it, but she just doesn't. Oh, it really is frustrating, because like you can tell they're getting so close to actually having like legitimate understanding of how this works. And hang on, wait, how do I hang on? There we go. All right. Should has actually been banned. I didn't realize. I'd only timed them out for a few seconds. I didn't like properly ban them. They're now banned. We're good. But yeah, how about we just let women present themselves however they want, and we don't tell them that if they don't present themselves a certain way that they're not real women, because guess what? You don't get to determine someone's identity. Only they get to do that. So why don't we just let people be themselves? Is this really so difficult? Let's go on.
Women that have spent a ton of money and time and energy and effort into their appearance to physically transition and to be socially seen as a woman would also disagree that women are formless. Also formless.
She's correct. Like I said, I don't think women are formless. I do think that women, there's certain things that make a woman, but it's not specific body type. It's not secondary sex characteristics. It all comes down to gender identity and your experience with yourself, your connection to yourself. That is what matters more than anything else. And if you know you're a woman, then you are a woman. Some people can't afford surgery. Some people can't afford hormones. Just because those people can't afford those things does not mean that they are any less legitimate than other women. Period. Your experience is what matters more than anything else, and there should never be any argument past that.
As my friend Memory says, yet somehow 99% of us can immediately discern who is male or female within seconds. Somehow in China they knew which babies to kill. Somehow they knew which group not to give bank accounts to or the right to vote and who to do female.
See, this is another TERF thing that really gets under my skin. The fact, like, whenever they call bottom surgery mutilation, whenever they try to make it seem that, Trekkie, hey, welcome to the party, comrade. I'm glad you decided to stop by. I am streaming. I'm between video editors at the moment, so this is actually going to be my new regular way to get content out. I don't have a set schedule right now because my work schedule is all over the place, but I want to pop on here and chat with y'all whenever I can. So you're going to see me a little more often than usual, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. But yeah, it's like they try to use, collectively I feel like formless would work if we're talking about arbitrary, and I'll say this lightly. So I'm trying to figure out how to, whenever I ban the user, I still have the user's account like blocking half the chat, and I don't know how to make it go away. Hang on, let me actually I'm going to pull the chat over here. Sorry, I am still, yes. Okay, got it figured out.
Genital mutilation on.
Don't feel
How
bad
can we
missing my
protect the
streams
rights?
when they aren't on usual schedule. It's okay. Yeah, what I'm trying to do is I think once I have enough like patrons and kind of financial support on the side to maybe work like one less day a week, I'd have like 4 days of work a week, and that would open up 3 days to like do streaming YouTube and try to kind of get more of a routine of it. So we'll see what happens.
Of formless, limitless beings. You don't. Taking away the definition of woman has a huge impact on women. How does literally nobody see this? Or people seeing it and they just don't care?
We're not taking away the definition of woman. If you're a trans woman, you're not trying to get rid of the definition of woman. How about instead of absolutely freaking out and acting like we're on some mission to like destroy womanhood forever, that we're simply suggesting, hey, why don't we expand the definition of woman so that way it fits cis women, it fits trans women, and anyone else who feels that that label fits them. We're not trying to get rid of it, but what a lot of TERFs tend to do is whenever trans women come up and they're like, hey, I feel like I'm not being respected like cis women are, like I would like for there to be just a little bit of space for me. They look at us and they're just like, how dare you threaten our place in society? How dare you try to redefine what woman means? And we're just like, we just want you to acknowledge us. We're not trying to take anything away from you. It's like the meme with equal rights where they're like, hey, equal rights are not like a pie. Just because someone gets one slice doesn't mean they're taking a slice away from you. It's like they believe that somehow if we're taken as seriously as them, then they'll have fewer rights. Therefore, we're trying to do away with the definition of woman. And it's one of those things, like, the more I look into it, I'm just like, I actually don't understand sometimes. You know, the reactionary mindset really is something else. And I know some of y'all have experienced that firsthand. Okay.
Includes trans women. If men and women can be interchanged so easily, then why doesn't everybody just become a man for the privilege?
Can I get the statistics for how many men are becoming a man? Can we get statistics for how many people are becoming men? Can you define for me what it means to become a man? What does that mean? You can't just say things like that and then not provide any explanation for what you're saying. If someone, okay, you don't just become a man. If you are a man, you are a man. If you're a trans woman, you're a woman. You've always been a woman. You just didn't know it whenever you were younger. Same thing if you're a trans man. If you're a trans man, you're a man. And you've always been a man, but you just didn't have the language to be able to put that together whenever you were a kid. Like, it's the same thing where they try to act like there's this pandemic of men saying they're women to go into women's bathrooms and sexually assault them. Like, they try to make it seem like this is a massive situation that's like taking over the US, and like the trans agenda is nothing more than an excuse for men to sexually assault women, when it's like, okay, how often does this actually happen? What are the stats? Because all of the research I've seen shows that it's either infinitesimally small or essentially as close to non-existent as it gets. But this is how fear-mongering works. What reactionaries have to do is they have to fearmonger. They have to use these strong terms of, they might just decide to become a man for the privilege. A man can dress up as a woman and go into a woman's prison or bathroom and rape people. Isn't that terrible? They use these extreme examples that have no grounding in reality, but they use enough charged language so that way it's like it overrides the logic center of your brain, and suddenly you're just like, oh my god, that's terrible. If you're someone who doesn't know anything about the trans community and you're very much insulated in a very conservative, evangelical, even like anti-intellectual bubble, you're not going to realize that what these people are saying is intentionally misleading. You're not going to catch that, and you're going to fall into like believing what they're saying. It's how people fall into the outright rabbit hole sometimes. You are told that becoming like a part of the alt-right means you'll have a community, you'll have a family, you'll have a group of like-minded people around you who will support you, but you're not paying attention to a lot of the things they're actually saying. You're not digging into the nuance of it. And it's the same thing here, where the only way they can paint a narrative is to use frightening language, to use deliberate misinformation. And you may also notice she's not used a single source yet. She's using tweets for her evidence. Tweets are not evidence. I'm sorry. You could literally take anyone's tweet off the internet, post it on screen, and try to claim that that's evidence. Those are words that a person typed on their phone. This is not research that's been done by any major medical, psychological institution. It's just a total rando on their iPhone on their lunch break thinking, you know what? I feel like saying something just to stir the pot and see what happens. And I feel like for some of these people, that's probably what it was.
Or, in prison, do the opposite. Just identify as a woman for the benefits. 1 in 50.
What did I just say?
Males in prison now are identifying as women who have no plans to transition, by the way. Why, you ask? Well, because women are formless voids and limitless, and women can be anything. Why would they go through the pain and misery of transitioning and potentially losing friends and family if they can reap the benefits of being treated as a woman if they don't have to? 1 in 50
In a way, she's kind of right. It's like, why would you go through all of this trouble to transition if your end goal is something very shallow or destructive? People wouldn't do that. Arielle Scarcella's hair is there. Oh, I mean, are they lying though? Actually, you know what? Let's just take a moment. Let's just take a moment. Honey, okay. Here's the thing. I don't know much about hair care, but this bit right here where she's got the hair sticking up here and it's just like sticking out then down. Honey, brush your hair before you start a video, please. We're not asking that much of you. I know more about wig care than hair care. I mean, in a lot of the ways, the basics are definitely the same. But no, I see what you're saying. We're getting sidetracked. Let's
family
continue.
if they can reap the benefits of being treated as a woman if they don't have to. 1 in 50 male prisoners are now self-identifying as transgender women, according to a survey by the official jail watchdog. Amid concerns, inmates may be attempting to secure extra perks. It suggests there are up to 1,500 transgender inmates among the 90,000 prisoners in England and Wales, more than 10 times previous estimates, and at least 4 times the number in the general population. To the few people.
Okay, well, here's what you have to look at whenever they try to make claims of like, there's so many more people in prison who are coming out as trans. Isn't that a problem? And I'm like, well, okay, here's the thing. Okay, so 2% of the prison population sounds like the average of society. Exactly. No, that's exactly it. They try to act like the number of people who are coming out in prison is somehow greater, like significantly greater than the general population. Here is a possibility. There are some people who maybe they're in denial of being trans. They're trying to do everything they can to repress their feelings, to ignore their identity, because they recognize how they'll be treated by society at large. They recognize that they're going to lose privileges. They're going to potentially lose rights. And it could like put them in a really dangerous situation. So what do? They hide those feelings, they hide themselves away, but then something happens where they're thrown in prison, and now you're in a situation that is toxic, full of like toxic masculinity, extremely heteronormative, and it's the kind of environment that it's like it almost forces that side of you out, where you suddenly realize that because of all of these external forces that are now being placed upon you, it's like your egg is being forced to shatter open. So for some people, this could be what's happening, where the reason why there seems to be more trans people coming out in prison, even though that's a study that needs to be looked at a bit more to see if there's actually any validity to it, because she has a habit of doing what Steven Crowder does and pulling up studies that were done by right-wing sources, and those right-wing sources were funded by companies who have a vested interest in spinning transphobia and false narratives about our community to further oppress it. Here, I'm actually into that the one thing. I mean, she is pretty, I will say that, but her soul is not. Let's continue.
People out there that I know that are going to say, why would anybody fake being transgender? Nobody would do that. There are actually tons of benefits to doing this in prison. Here are some.
How does faking being trans help you, especially in prison? Because I feel like, again, I don't know much about the prison system, but I feel like there would be some sort of measures in place where if someone thinks that they're trans, then they would either see a psychologist, they would have meetings with either like a therapist or someone. There would be some sort of consultation to figure out whether or not what they're saying is valid. I don't I can't picture this situation where they're just prisoners going up and being like, hey, I'm trans, and like just snap their fingers and then boom, that's it. Like, again, this is why I'm just like, there has to be more to this study because I can't picture something like this happening in real life.
Some of them. Dr. James Barrett writes, these vary from the opportunity to have trips out of prison, the idea that a parole board will perceive somebody who is female as being less dangerous, to a false belief that hormone treatment will actually render one less dangerous, to wanting a special or protected status within the prison system. A plethora of prison intelligence information suggests that the driving force was a desire to make subsequent sexual offending very much easier, females being generally perceived as low risk in this regard. My friend Buck Angel on this topic had said,
okay, I was going to comment on the last thing, but if you say Buck Angel in a video, I'm immediately not going to take you seriously because, okay, let's just get it out there. I don't know if everyone agrees with me on this, but in my mind, Buck Angel is a terrible human being. He is awful. He regularly invalidates the existence of and like lived experiences of non-binary people. He outed one of the Wachowski sisters. He's been involved in many an illegal pyramid scheme. He is not a good human being. He has ties to the alt-right. Every now and then he makes tweets that come off as very almost white nationalist in nature. He's a terrible human being. And if you bring up his name in a video like this, and it seems to be in a positive manner, the only thing I can assume is that either you're in cahoots with him or you feel like giving him a little bit of leeway. That you're like, well, it's kind of like whenever ContraPoints in the video after Opulence, she was like, well, I mean, think of everything Buck Angel's done for the trans community. Plus, like, look how hot he is. I'm just like, that doesn't matter. Look at all of the harm he is actively doing right now, not just to the non-binary community, but also to just young trans people in general. He constantly harasses and bullies them online. And he's one of those people where it's kind of like, I love ContraPoints, but she is very wrong at that take. Yeah, I struggled with Contra for a while. I kind of fell into the whole train of people who were just like canceling her, wanted nothing to do with her. I was very, very aggressive in that way for a while. I was just like, I want nothing to do with her. I disavow her, blah, 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 blah. But I stopped, I calmed down, and I kind of looked at things from both perspectives where I was like, you know, she has made a lot of problematic comments, and someone with her platform, she should have looked into Buck Angel first and understood the consequences of bringing someone like him onto her channel, which is followed by a lot of people who have been hurt by him. She should have been aware of that, and I do think that's a significant mistake she made. I don't think she's a terrible human being, and I do think she's flawed, and I know in some ways she has tried to make up for that, but it's things like that where I have a hard time with her. She is an anti-MB, but I think she didn't think about it. I think that's what it was. Like, whenever she first started her channel, she had like 3 or 4 videos that were supportive of non-binary people. So this whole narrative that she's non-binary phobic, I think is completely false. There's no validity. There's no substantiation to that. It's not true, period. But again, she needs to be more aware of what she's saying. She needs to take more responsibility. And I think in that regard, she could do better. Absolutely. But again, with the quote that she just popped on screen, you need to give us the stats for how much this is actually happening in real life. Is this actually a problem where male prisoners are pretending to be women to gain advantages? Just the whole way she says that is incredibly problematic because there's a lot of underlying transphobia and delegitimization of our experiences to make it seem like men are just dressing up as women and going and sexually assaulting actual women, in her words. She's still keeping that narrative going.
Said, well, why are more trans women coming out in prison than trans men? When on the outside world, more women are becoming men. I think
Oh, wait, okay, go back to that. So first, I love that on some of his tweets at the end, he does, please answer with grace and not name calling, please. If you don't want people to attack you, how about you don't make shitty takes? How about you don't be a bigot? How about you don't be an ass to people who follow you? If you don't want people attacking you, maybe take a little responsibility for your words. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm asking too much of him, but like I feel like that's fairly obvious. But remember when I said Buck Angel has ties to people on the right and he's espoused a lot of like far right views? This line right here, when in the outside world more women are becoming men, that's another narrative where it's taking on modern day feminism, where they like to say that feminists just want to be men, that they want to leave their roles behind, that they're forgetting their place. That's what that comment is implying. Even if you didn't necessarily mean that specifically, that is what comments like that are used to say, is they're trying to say that it's not that women are being liberated from all gender norms, but it's that somehow they just want what the men have, and to do that, they decide to be more like men, which again is a way to separate one class of people from another and say that there can never be any mixing between them, that women are just forever separate from men, and that's that. There's certain things that a woman does in society that a man can't do, and the other way around. But again, it's this old traditionalist way of thinking where you lock people in boxes and you don't ever allow them to leave that box, no matter how unhealthy it becomes for them. This is why, like, in my mind, I think gender norms absolutely need to be destroyed completely, because this is what happens. You have people who think that it's bad for women, and even like femme people, even if they're not a cis woman, trans women, gender norms go bye-bye when? Seriously, like, can we all just, like, sign a petition, snap our fingers, do a little satanic ritual on the ground, and, like, make gender norms go poof? Because that'd be fantastic. I would love that. But yeah, it's just they refuse to move forward with the times. They refuse to accept the fact that someone who identifies one way can present themselves in many ways. Here's something for y'all to remember. Gender identity does not automatically mean gender presentation. The two of them are components of one another, but just because you identify one way doesn't mean you have to strictly present that way. Your identity is the inner, your presentation is the outer. That's how that works. It's called being a human being. There are plenty of cis women who dress in a traditionally masc way or butch way, even though there's a part of me that's, I don't know if I like that term, but not for me to judge. Let's move on.
More women are becoming men. I think this person nailed it on Twitter for the potential benefits in this situation. But you know, women are formless voids, so except that people actually know what the female form is when it comes to oppressing them. Sex is why...
All right, okay. This is one that's a little bit harder to argue against, where people try to say that the reason women are oppressed is because there's a specific feminine form that targets them for oppression. I think there is a little bit to that, because people who are assigned female at birth, once they've gone through their first puberty, and say they're like 20, 25, the majority of the time, they do tend to be, at least depending on genetics, you do tend to see female-bodied people as having smaller frames and not having quite the same strength as someone who's more masc-bodied, because that person has testosterone, which aids in the development of stronger muscles and things like that. But I think if we're talking about the oppression of women, it absolutely goes beyond that, because even from like early days in human civilization, you saw this hierarchy where the masc people were given control in society and the femme people were given less. The men were deemed as the stronger ones, and they were deemed more worthy of holding all of the power and control, and the femme people were seen as lesser. They were seen as unable to take on those roles. They were seen as the ones who should stay home and clean and take care of the kitchen, the kids, and propagate and further the species. And it's been this way for thousands of years, but a lot of us are finally waking up and we're realizing that all of that is nonsense, that people can be whoever they want to be. I hate moids. Yeah, no, seriously, the femoids like this are just bad. But no, it's a completely nonsensical hierarchy. But again, it goes back to just because we're challenging cis women's place in society, people like Arielle are immediately freaking out because they're just like, I mean, different gender roles and numbers of gender. No, exactly. That's totally right, Trekkie. I'm meaning more kind of like what you see the majority of the time, what tends to be seen as more like typical culture, what people on the alt-right would see as like traditional culture. But no, there have absolutely been, like, especially in indigenous peoples in America, you have like many genders. You see in like older cultures all around the world. I actually want to do studying on this. I want to do a stream on this at some points. Once I've done a lot more research on it, because like I'm super fascinated by trans people and just like gender variant people who have been around for like thousands upon thousands of years. Because it's like we have such a rich history, but I feel like so many, even the community, aren't fully aware of that. It's just, it would be good to have more awareness. We're on a tangent. Let's get back.
Women are oppressed. I posted the UN tweet to my Facebook and Twitter, and some of you guys had a lot to say. Somebody said it is defining women as abstract, which is not a definition at all. It deliberately obfuscates our reality and experiences and how they are shaped by our bodies themselves. I personally hate using the words privilege and oppression, but both males and females experience both in different ways.
Privilege and oppression are both things that happen, though. Why do you hate using those words? There's nothing wrong with them. Also, okay, let's go back to the tweet she just posted, because there's one thing in this that I want to point out. So, again, this comment says, yeah, there's nothing new about people breaking the gender binary. What's new is our conception of gender as a binary, as the hegemonic model to use. Yeah, I actually came across that recently. Where our modern understanding, or like what conservatives say, where there's only men and women, that's it. Like whenever I grew up in the church, this is the type of thinking they had, where they were like, well, God created man and woman and that's it. But look at how Roman Catholicism essentially wiped Europe clean of paganism. They came in and they were like, we don't like these dirty old religions. We're just gonna cleanse the lands and let our belief system take control. Our good, clean, holy belief system. No, absolutely. Like this whole idea that it's only been the two forever. I didn't realize how extensive the history was of that until recently, and my mind was just like we talked in the stream, Trekkie. Like I'm definitely still breaking out of a lot of the misinformation I was fed in the South, and it's kind of amazing how the more I learn, I'm just like, there are thousands of years of history I was lied to about or just not told, period. But it's cool, you know, because it helps you see through these transphobic arguments, these very anti-intellectual right-wing arguments that try to delegitimize our existence when, in fact, we have been around for millennia, and there's nothing they can say to make that all disappear, you know? And I think that's really powerful for us because, like, we have history behind us. The education system is complete shit based on outdated models. No, absolutely. Especially, like, modern education, especially in America. It's built to program children to see America as the good guys, to see everything that this country does as good and justified and can never be questioned. They're taught to see capitalism as a good thing. They're taught to see certain gender norms as a good thing, when in fact, None of that is true. Also, Mimi Madness, I'm going to have to remember that for later. It'd be kind of fun to do like a little trans chant. There are lots of small protests here in Portland, and it'd be kind of fun to pull one together, you know?
Our bodies themselves. I personally hate using the words privilege and oppression, but both males and females experience both in different ways, and you can't simply identify out of those things. And I know a few people are gonna...
Are you sure? No, okay. It's tricky what she's doing here, but she's saying you can't identify out of those things. Essentially saying that you can't identify your way out of biological sex, which obviously is complete bullshit, because we know, we have known for decades now, the sex you were assigned at birth is separate from gender identity. Your experience with your body, your internal sense of self, is the strongest determiner for who you are. And this idea that people are trying to identify out of it's what a lot of people still do whenever, and I've heard Blair White do this, where she tries to say that there will always, like, say you're a trans woman, she'll say things like, well, there's always going to be a man part of you. Little personification that turfs are full of shit. Yeah, absolutely. And I am happy to just let my existence prove that every bit of what they're saying is wrong. But it's not just me. It is every single trans woman or trans femme person out there where, because of how real our lived experiences are, everything people that like Arielle say are immediately just wrong. None of what she says holds any substance. But it doesn't matter, because she knows there are a lot of people in her audience who will believe everything she says. They won't do any research on their own. They'll continue peddling and spreading the misinformation and transphobia that she spits out in every single video, and it's all by design. And people like this really frustrate me.
Gonna be like, okay, trans women, we know that we're male, we know that we're not female, why do you keep bringing this up?
Hang on, wait, what?
And I know a few people are gonna be like, okay, trans women, we know that we're male, we know that we're not female, why do you keep bringing this up?
What? How many trans women are saying, I know I'm male, I know I'm not female? How many of us are saying that? Excuse me? Well, Blair White, actually, yeah. Are those the trans women that try to bootleg the cis? I'm like 99% sure that is, like, yeah, these are the trans women who, for whatever reason, have decided to deep throat the boots of the cis community. My brain is hurting more the more... Listen, this is how I feel about her. It's like the more I'm exposed to her, I can just feel little bits of my brain just like dribbling out of my ear little by little. It's absolutely terrible. Again, like, can you show me where things like this are happening? Where are there trans women supposedly in enough numbers where it's like noticeable, where they're saying, oh, I'm not a woman, I'm a man? If you're trans, you wouldn't say that in the first place, because that goes against what it means to be trans. Let's continue before I start going on like a 10-minute rant where half of it is just cursing.
We know. Because shit like this happens. Because 99.5% of the women in the world who are female are...
Let's bring that back. Okay. Let's read this quote, and let's try to think about this in the context of her video, what she's trying to say. If you think I am less of a woman or not a woman because I don't fit your mental picture of what a woman should look like or what body parts women should or shouldn't have, newsflash, Your mental description of women is not only inaccurately narrow, but anti-feminist and bigoted as well, which, ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, this person is absolutely 110% correct. Because there aren't things that make you less of a woman. If you are a woman, you are a woman. And there is nothing that can change that. Just because your secondary sex characteristics, just because like some parts of your behavior, just because there's certain things about you that go against cultural stereotypes, that doesn't make you less of a woman. Hey, again, maybe we should expand the definition of woman, and maybe we should get rid of gender norms so that way people can live free of all of these stupid stereotypes that prevent you from being yourself and from being able to live without everyone breathing down your back and being like, you know, whenever you wear things like that, it's just, I don't think other women would do that. You know, whenever you talk that way or you act that way, just, I mean, you call yourself a woman, but do you really want to be seen doing that? Just, you know, exactly. Get rid of all of that and just let people be themselves. I don't understand why this is such a problem. We were talking about Catholics eating all the pagans. I did see that. Yeah. I want to do a video on that specifically. I actually have a friend in Colorado who is a pagan, and she has a lot to say about it. She's fiercely passionate about like paganism, but also about basically the destruction that Roman Catholicism brought to culture. And I'm going to have her on to do an interview. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to do it in the next few weeks. And I'll let her have at it because she's fiercely passionate. And I think she would be an absolute blast to have on. So look forward to that soon. Let's continue.
Shit like this happens because 99.5% of the women in the world who are female are being erased. That is not okay, in my opinion.
How are you being erased, love? How am I, sweet little me, how am I erasing you from existence? Okay, so let's think about this, okay? Just me sitting here. How am I erasing you from existence merely by me existing? It's like as soon as I exist, just boop, you disappear. Like there can only be one of us. That's, again, this is not what happens. We're not trying to erase cis women. What we're trying to do is we're trying to exist in the same place in society that has been kept away from us by a lot of cis women who do not see us as real women, even though we are real women. We're not trying to erase anything. We see the value in women's spaces, and we simply want to be included because we are women. There's nothing more to this. It's absolutely like, it's maddening when they say things like this, where it's like the trans agenda, which is nothing more than, hey, trans people are people. How about we treat them like people? Let's give them the same rights as everyone else. Yeah? That's the trans agenda. All there is to it. We want to be treated like people, period. Boom. That's it. Wow. So evil. We're so terrible. I'm not sorry for her existence.
Now, in saying all of that, don't call trans women men. Just don't do it. It's not nice. Most trans women, if not all trans women that I know personally, do their best in society to fit in, to be seen as women. It's offensive to call trans women men, and it's also offensive to call women formless. I identify.
Okay. So I agree. I actually agree with her that it is offensive to call people like myself men because I'm not a fucking man. I'm a woman, and I have known this for a while now. And no person, well, that would take, if someone calls me a man, they should understand that that's not okay. It's not okay to delegitimize the experiences of other human beings just because you don't understand them. Just because you don't understand them, it doesn't give you a right to discriminate or dehumanize them. It simply means you don't understand them, and it's a learning opportunity to get to know more about me and realize, hey, I'm a person too. That's so cool. And then we all move on with our lives closer together than before. But to say that it's offensive to call women formless, how? Like, we're not trying to say that like anyone quote unquote can be a woman. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that the form of woman that society tries to say makes a woman, she deliberately removed the nuance. No, that's exactly what she's doing. Okay, I'm actually really glad you said this, because this is what a lot of conservatives in general do, is they completely ignore the nuance and they present things as, and isn't this funny, a binary, where it's either one or the other. It's black and it's white, and there is no room for nuance or other types of understanding. It's this or this, period, and they refuse to be budged out of seeing things that way. And it's exactly like this, where she rightfully acknowledges that it is offensive to call trans women men, because we are not men. I am a woman. But to say that it's offensive to call women formless, we're not saying that. Again, please show me the trans women who are out here saying women are formless, destroy the meaning of woman, rah! Like, can you show me the Carfax? No? All right then.
Identify as a formless void. Let's not. The point of making this video is there has to be a way for society to respect both types of people without erasing either of our existences or experiences. Saying trans women are men and don't have any women experience.
She's so close to getting it. You hear what she just said? Let's not erase either of our experiences. She doesn't realize what she's saying when she says that. That, yes, let's acknowledge that cis women and trans women exist. Let's not erase those experiences. Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's what we want. But she's still very subtly trying to imply that trans women are either less women than cis women, or we are a quote-unquote different kind of woman where we can never truly be woman. She's trying to make it sound like, again, if you acknowledge us, if you take us seriously, if you see us as women, then that somehow means that cis women will have fewer rights, that they will be less legitimate, that they will lose what they have in society, which, I mean, everyone, like, we should all know that's nonsense. Hopefully.
Experiences is not true if they are seen as women in society. And saying that women in general are formless is denying the shit that we go through for simply having a body that is female. My rant is over, but here are some of the things my friends had to say on.
See, this is my reaction whenever I hear things like this sometimes. I don't know what to say. Like, she's saying that somehow we're trying to delegitimize the experience that she has with her body. Well, the thing is, you were born with a uterus. People who are born with a uterus have different experiences than people who are not born with a uterus. But people like you, what about cis women or people with uteruses who can't have children? What if they're barren? What do you do with them then? Do you still consider them like real women? Or do you consider them something else? Again, the nuance is completely lost. It's very subtle delegitimization of certain people. You have to fit a very specific set of attributes. You have to fill the checklist. Otherwise, you are not taken seriously and you are not seen as what you really are. Which is, it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. It's going back to that traditionalist way of thinking.
this topic.
The idea that woman has absolutely no definition isn't just a problem for biological women, but it's a huge problem for trans women as well. If we are to transition in society and be seen as the way that we want to be seen, woman has to have a definition. There has to be something around that where people can anchor themselves into the idea of what a woman is. By our very definition, a trans woman will not fit all of the criteria, specifically along the biological line, because if we were biologically women, we wouldn't be transitioning in the first place. We know what a woman is. In general, a woman is a biological, adult, human female.
If there is one term I hate more than anything else, and I know some of y'all know this, is whenever the TERFs go around with the shirts that say adult human female. And it's really disappointing to me when I see YouTubers like her who are trans and they're furthering TERF talking points, which are the exact thing that are used to further marginalize us. It's like, whenever she was talking earlier about like trans women supposedly saying that, well, we know we're men and we know we're not women, it's almost like this is the kind of person she was talking about, where they are intentionally furthering this idea that if the biological part of you is not woman, then you're not a woman. But we've also seen that things like chromosomes, things like DNA, things like secondary sex characteristics, in the end, they really don't mean that much. Like, compared to your actual experience with yourself, these external features and these things that show up on a medical chart don't actually play that much of a role in determining how you understand yourself, your experience within yourself. And to hear someone who's trans, who should know better than this, it's like, I don't understand how you fall into this mindset. And it's the same thing with Blair White. Like, how do you get to a point where you are actively supporting your own oppression by supporting these people who don't want you to have the same place in society that cis women have? Like, how can you do that to yourself? I don't know. I really have a hard time with things like that, where it's like, surely some part of you has to realize that this is problematic. And I know some of them have probably like fallen into the propaganda far enough to where they don't really understand that that's what they're doing. But yeah. So we're going to end this video, but I have a second one. And would you believe me if I said it's better? Like, actually better? Arielle came out with a new video a few days ago, and this is one I actually have.
Hi, so I've been making videos on this channel.
Sorry, it started autoplaying.
Hi.
Okay, I'm gonna switch this video over on OBS real quick and pop it on screen. But this video is one in which she actively talks about a lot of criticism that's been leveled at her. She actively talks
to fly a
about,
rocket ship, you need to run a test.
You have a fabulous mustache.
No astronaut.
Look at that. I love the guy. He's cool.
Hi. So I've been making.
Okay. The title of this video is Finally Addressing the Rumors, where she is going to take on all of the claims head to head that she is a bigot, that she's a transphobe, that she's sexist. She's going to tell us, wonderful people of the world, how those claims about her are not only not accurate, but not true whatsoever. Now, Mew Mew Madness, you're totally fine. Please, spam away. You are carrying forth the experience, so please, whatever you have to say, tell me. I'm here. Let's see how the lovely Arielle Scarcella defends herself, shall we? I'm sure it won't be full of grifting, lying, trying to back away from things that she definitely did say. Let's take a look.
Videos on this channel for 10 years now. 10 years. I'm an OG YouTube lesbian. And over that massive amount of time, one can imagine that I've said some pretty dumb shit, which led to a lot.
No, you think? I mean, listen, I couldn't have figured that out myself. I don't know about you, but I'm glad she's being so honest with us and herself. Good on her.
A lot of people hating me, but more importantly, people hate me for things that never happened, that I have never said. She's racist. Arielle's biphobic. I heard Arielle.
Have you not said things in the past that were biphobic? Because I'm pretty sure you said quite a few things in the past that were biphobic. But again, you know, maybe it's just me. What do I know? Sometimes my brain hears things and it sounds like you're saying one thing, but I don't know, maybe my brain's wrong. Maybe my perception of reality is wrong. Could be. Yeah, never happens. No, it's that thing where she's like, yeah, I know I said it, but it actually never happens.
Arielle's not even a real lesbian. Literally, I actually have no idea where the racist comments even came from. So I found this video that kind of outlines all of my controversial issues over the years, and since so many people are new to my channel or are on the fence about me and don't know my opinions on certain issues, this video is perfect for you, so keep watching.
I've come out from hiding in my classic rock happy place to bring you another Everything Wrong With video, this time about Arielle Scarcella, because she revealed herself to be the lesbian Dave Rubin. At first, I thought
videos on this channel for
100% correct. She is the lesbian Dave Rubin. Oh my god, that's such a perfect descriptor. I'm gonna be sitting here thinking about it like that's so perfect for her. Ooh. I have a new tagline for Arielle Scarcella. Also, I shouldn't... Why did I skip to the beginning of the video? I just completely lost where I was. Alright.
To be the lesbian Dave Rubin. At first, I thought she wasn't that bad. She had diverse guests and was a big voice in the LGBT community. But then I listened to what trans people had to say, and I saw the light. She is not on our side at all.
Let's take a second just to acknowledge the fact that the people I call out in my content, if I ever actually call an individual out, which is very rarely, they are people who I think are legitimately bad people or making a bad name for the LGBT community.
Okay, well here's the thing though. You did a video about Jessica Yaniv, who I myself have denounced multiple times, but what you did with her is you try to paint this image that she presents, she's the figurehead of a much larger movement within the trans community of people who use the trans status to take advantage of others. That is a narrative you have intentionally pushed over and over again. Don't sit here and try to say that it's like, oh, I rarely call people out. Well, yeah, whenever you do, it's to further your own agenda. And any of us right now could go and look at your older videos, which I'm not going to do because I can only handle 2 of these at once. But we can see that whenever she talks about trans people in this manner, there is an underlying motive, and it's to delegitimize, again, our experiences, and it's to paint us as predators. It's to paint us as dangerous, which is a TERF talking point. Whenever people try to say that Arielle is not a TERF, I'm like, what you need to do is you need to look at the things that make a TERF a TERF. And if someone fits all of those things, if they're doing all of those things, then by definition, they are a TERF. This is how definitions work. And sometimes you change them to progress with our understanding of ourselves. It's not a set definition. But a lot of times, there are very specific things that are very telling if someone is TERF or not. And in my experience, I'm not saying Arielle's a TERF, but I think we can all put two brain cells together and figure that one out for ourselves, can't we? Play!
September 15th, 2013, Arielle uploaded a video called What Lesbians Think of Bisexuals. The video got very mixed reception and bisexuals were reasonably upset.
If you had to describe bisexual girls in one word, what would it be?
Greedy. To be honest with you, confused.
All I heard were negative stereotypes like confused, greedy, slutty, you're either one or the other, that they're really straight, that they want threesomes.
Okay, God. This was a viral video I made back in 2013. For me, it was viral. It got like 1 million views in a few weeks, which was like pretty viral even for anybody making YouTube videos about gay culture back then. And to this day, I still get called biphobic because of this. Here's a secret though. Half of the lesbians in that video were dating bisexual women at the time of filming this video. One of them even made an appearance at the end of that video.
I'm about to blow y'all's mind with something. Are y'all ready? If you're trans, you can still be transphobic. If you're bisexual, you can still be biphobic. If you're non-binary, you can still be non-binary phobic. If you are a black conservative, you're kind of racist. Like, again, they're trying to say, this is kind of boiling it down to like liberal identity politics, to where if you are a certain person, then that means you can't be like bigoted against your own people, which is not true. Anyone can be bigoted against people who identify like them, who look like them, who live like them. It's this really strange idea that, like, I debated someone in a Pioneer Square a year ago. I debated a trans woman who was waving a Trump flag around. And whenever I went up to her and I was like, don't you think that your status as a trans woman, the fact that you are supporting someone who actively does all he can to further marginalize us and essentially remove us from society, don't you think that your support of him is a bit transphobic? And she looked me in the eye and she was like, I'm trans, so I can't be transphobic. Which obviously we know is not true. Whatever you are, you can still be a bigot. Your identity, or who you are, your race, your class, that does not exclude you. It does not absolve you of your own bigotry. It doesn't. There's still a chance that you can be that, which is why you have to be better than that. If you're part of a marginalized community, you should do everything you can to recognize that what you do needs to be in the aid of you and people like you. You shouldn't be harming your own cause by furthering talking points, by supporting people, by supporting organizations whose only goal is to further marginalize you. It's not something lighthearted, because eventually it's going to affect you, and then it's going to affect everyone like you, and then it's going to branch out like a butterfly effect and affect everyone else in society. Even if it doesn't seem like much at the time, it could turn out horribly. So even this little thing that she's saying right here, where she's trying to imply that because these people were bisexual that they can't be biphobic, is completely wrong. It doesn't matter that they themselves were bi. It doesn't matter that they were dating other lesbians. That does not automatically mean that they cannot do things that are biphobic or bigoted. Everyone has the potential to do that. You just have to have the awareness, and you have to have the mindfulness to recognize how your actions affect you and your class. So that way you are only doing that which aids your cause and your people. It's almost like whenever Peter Kropotkin wrote Mutual Aid, like it was actually kind of important and relevant. Like, I don't know.
You know what? A lot of lesbians are hurt and left because once a woman found out that they weren't truly biromantic or bisexual, and they go back to men. That's a real thing that happens. Because in my opinion, the truth is most women...
Well, yeah, but that's just because they're figuring their sexuality out. Just because they identify as bisexual for a while and then they no longer do, that doesn't mean that their experience, like any of it, was any less real. It's like whenever I was figuring my sexuality out, I thought I was bisexual for a while, but then I realized I'm actually pansexual. But just because I realize I'm pansexual does not mean that my experiences whenever I thought I was bi were any less real. And it's almost like they're trying to claim that like they were faking it, that they were only doing it for attention, that they're only doing it to like hop on a trend, which is where you hear the absolutely ridiculous term transgender. This is part of where that comes from, where they're trying to say that like, well, because they didn't identify or love that way for a while, it doesn't actually mean they were that. It's okay to use a label and then realize, oh, I don't like this, and it shouldn't be stigmatized. Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. Like say you come out as a trans woman and you identify that way for a few years, but then you start to realize that you feel a bit more non-binary. So you start experimenting and you realize that calling yourself non-binary, using they them pronouns, actually fits much closer with your personal identity. You feel much more comfortable. It feels natural to you. That doesn't mean that the time you identified as a binary trans woman, it doesn't mean those experiences are any less real. It just means that at that time, you didn't have as much understanding of yourself as you do now. It was a building block to get you to where you are now, but in no way does it mean you were faking anything. It doesn't mean that you were trying to hop on a trend. It doesn't mean that somehow your actions are harming anyone else. Just because even like the very, very minor amount of people who come out as trans and then detransition later, that doesn't mean that their experiences were any less real, but they were in the process of trying to figure themselves out. And just doing that, when you are actively trying to expand your understanding of yourself, that's not bringing harm on anyone. It just means that you're doing what humans do and you're trying to have a healthier connection with yourself, your body, your identity, which is something that everyone should do. Like, how is this harming anyone? Like, I don't understand.
Are bisexual, but most women are not biromantic. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just telling you where lesbians are coming from. But just please recognize that this sucks. And when it does hit us, usually out of nowhere, it hits us like a truck. And in the follow-up...
Well, okay, this is understandable. I've gone through something like this recently where I dated someone who was more comfortable being monogamous. For those of you who don't know, I am polyamorous. I've only known for about 7-8 months, but I'm much more comfortable being in polyamorous relationships than I am being monogamous. And what happened was my ex felt more comfortable being with someone who was monogamous than polyamorous for a multitude of reasons. And it's understandable. You know, like, you have to look out for yourself and you have to do what's best for you. Obviously, it hurt a lot. And the next few weeks after that were really difficult, and I can only imagine like what they went through. But just because they came to that realization that they knew there was another type of relationship they'd be more comfortable in does not mean that they were faking anything, that they were trying to hurt anyone, and that any of what they experienced was like not real. Because I know they could vouch that it was real, but they just realized that as they grew to understand themselves more, as they grew to understand and like really figure out what felt more comfortable for them, they realized that there was something else that would work better for them. And so they took the initiative to do that for themselves. And I'm really proud of them for doing that, you know, because like that takes a lot. It takes a lot of guts to bring that to your partner and be like, listen, I just don't feel like I can do this anymore. That's an incredibly hard thing to do. And yes, like she said, of course it hurts. Of course, like no one's gonna sit there and like try to take that away from you. Of course things like that hurt a lot, but it's not being done to bring harm to you. It's because that person needs the space to better understand themselves. They need to like the space to exist more comfortably and do what feels more natural to them. Back when I was still a baby lefty, I legit was worried that it was bad and selfish to be monogamous, and I felt like shit. No, I mean, that's completely understandable. Whenever I was still in Texas, maybe back like 2011, 2012, I was in a relationship with someone and I started developing feelings for someone else, but my feelings for that person did not take away from my feelings for the first person, and it terrified me because I didn't know what polyamory was at the time, and I thought it meant like there was something wrong with my relationship, and that somehow it meant like I was cheating on my partner at the time because I had feelings for someone else. But it's like, no, silly, you're poly. I didn't engage with those feelings. I ran away from it. I shut it down. And that was that for like 6 more years. It's completely understandable to feel like that, to feel like if culture tells you that it's better to be monogamous, that's going to cause you to feel shame for feeling different than the norms that culture tries to dictate upon you. Because it's very intentional. A lot of these cultural norms are meant to keep you in a box. And if you start breaking out of that box, you start showing characteristics that veer away from what society says is right or normal. It's completely natural to feel shame for that. But it's good that you recognize that. Being mono, open, or poly is okay. None is better than the other, and don't feel guilty for being any of these. No, absolutely. You should never feel guilty for being any type of identity or loving any certain like type of way. Every identity, sexuality, way of loving, everything, all of it is valid. You know, if you know it's real to you, then it's real. Period. And there should never be any argument past that. So with all of that being said,
a video I made where I let the bisexual women talk, they all agreed with me on that sentiment. So in saying all of that, would you agree with me in saying that there are actually a lot more women who are sexually bisexual rather than romantically bisexual as well? Do you think that's a legitimate reason for lesbians to be a
I'm going to ask you an honest question real quick because I haven't dug enough into this and I actually don't know. Is it possible to be biromantic but not bisexual? Because there's a part of me that's kind of like, I feel like that's not right because that would be, yes, okay. I was just going to say I'm still learning a lot about like sexualities outside of my own. I'm still, the connection between like sexuality and romanticism, I'm still learning a lot more about. Okay, so that's actually, okay. See, this is why I appreciate y'all. Y'all teach me, I give knowledge to you, and that's how it should be. This is why I'm glad y'all are here, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
bit turned off by the whole thing?
I'm gonna say yes, I do agree with you on that.
A lot of bisexuals, more so like they'll have sex with girls, but like they actually romantically would rather like be with a man.
Who cares if someone is experimenting? Why are we policing somebody's sexuality? Sexuality is fluid and can change throughout someone's life, and that's okay if that's the case for you.
No one is policing anyone's sexuality. I have never done that. In fact, my videos have shown the complete opposite. The issue is that with bisexual women not telling a lesbian that they are not biromantic, or don't know if they are, or don't know what they are, and not being upfront about it. Maybe it's time to talk to a few lesbians and hear their stories instead of making this all about bisexuals and
Well, okay. If someone's uncertain about their sexuality, it's good for them to experiment and try to figure that out. I can understand maybe the need to be honest with a partner and be like, I'm kind of working through some feelings. There's some things I'm more certain on, other things not so much. And like potentially like really hurting that partner if they aren't straightforward about certain things. But that's not like that doesn't delegitimize like their experience with their sexuality. That's more like a reflection on the relationship itself, is that there isn't as much open, honest communication as there needs to be, and there could be reasons for that. The one person could be really scared to say something to their partner because they don't want to lose them. Maybe they've experienced a lot of trauma in their life and it's really difficult for them to communicate that. There could be all kinds of reasons for there being like barriers in communication, and that's why, you know, over time it's good for both or more if it's like a polyamorous relationship, for everyone to like be able to work through that together and not feel like there's certain things that they must come out with immediately. As the two of you or more, like you all flesh each other out, you come to a greater understanding of like not just yourselves, but the dynamic between all of you. So, I mean, there could be times where, say, someone does think that they're bisexual and biromantic, and they date someone who is also biromantic, and a little ways into that relationship, one person realizes, actually, I don't think I'm biromantic. Again, that's not to say that like their experience was any less real, but it's just saying that by dating that other biromantic person, they were able to come to that understanding of themselves that actually that's not the kind of relationship that works for them, which is good. Again, it's going to hurt, but that's not like a negative mark. Can I say something really just in this relevant where you're saying about the point where start to break those boundaries, realize a lot about themselves? If you feel comfortable saying it under the thunder, fire away. We're going to continue in the meantime.
Also, important note, sexuality is fluid. Sexual orientation is not. Sexuality is the way you express yourself sexually.
What do you mean sexual orientation's not fluid? Because mine is. My orientation has changed significantly over time. What? How is sexuality not fluid? Sexuality is just as fluid as gender identity. It's not this set concrete thing. The more you come to understand yourself, for some people it's rigid, for some people it's fluid. No, absolutely. My sexuality is, it's almost like she's trying to imply that like they're all rigid, that like there aren't people who have a fluid experience with theirs. It's that minor delegitimization of people's experiences where she's like, this is this, and then this is not. Remember what I said about thinking in a binary? That's another example of it right there, where she tries to deny the experiences of some people.
Sexually, sexual orientation is who you are attracted to. Okay, now we're getting into 2014 territory where I started collaborating with more trans creators and did more trans topics. The most of my hate comes from, I think,
turning turf. But Arielle is two-faced.
I mean, maybe whenever you collaborated with those trans creators, you could have had more conversations with them. You could have been more open to listening to them. You could have tried to come to a better understanding of the trans experience, instead of turning into the female or the lesbian Dave Rubin. That's so good.
And isn't to be trusted. She implied that trans women can't be lesbians and that lesbians cannot be into pre- or non-op trans women. The mask is off. Why does she think like this? Since I'm not in Arielle's head, I can't answer those questions.
I feel like my views on this specific topic actually haven't changed much at all. If you want to call yourself a lesbian, and if you are a trans woman and you are non-op or pre-op, I don't care. What I do care about, and I've said this in multiple videos and people are still getting it wrong, is when you are redefining the way I define my lesbianism and then call me transphobic or a bigot for not living up to your standardness of wokeness.
I don't know if you could have packed any more like dog whistles and like catchphrases into one little sentence. So we're not. This gets into the part of conservatism, into transphobia, into bigotry, into grifters, that actually makes me genuinely angry. Whenever they look at people like myself and they say that because I'm trying to come to a better understanding of people, I'm trying to have a better understanding of gender identity, of sexuality, of relationships, that somehow whenever I'm trying to impart that knowledge on others, that makes me woke, and that I'm just being too harsh, that I'm being too critical, that I'm just focusing too much on these things, that I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Literally, what I'm trying to do is trying to help people understand, hey, some of these things you say, some of these beliefs you have are actually the result of really harmful, outdated stereotypes. And what you're doing is, even though you yourself may be a great person, you may not realize that what you're doing is harming others. And what we try to do is we try to kind of help them come to a realization of that, of saying like, hey, whenever you say A, B, and C, I know you're not meaning to harm us, but there are things in there that are very subtly bigoted. They're very subtly transphobic. They are very subtle ways of hey, the idea is no, actually, I mean, that's the thing. See, conservatives tend to be more sexually repressed. This is not the case for all of them, but I've noticed that conservative ideologies and religious ideologies tend to cause you to repress the freedom of expression, to repress the freedom of like sexual expression, of gender presentation, of who you date, how many people you date, what kind of life you live. It goes back to like putting you in these boxes. You're not allowed the freedom to just be yourself. So what that ends up doing is you don't realize certain things about yourself until later on. In this place, we are sex positive. We are absolutely sex positive. Another thing y'all probably don't know about me is I am in the kink community. I am sex positive, I am body positive, I am kink positive, I am queer positive, and I will fight to the death to defend every single one of those, no matter what. Because that's what matters. Everyone should be free to do whatever they want, live however they want. As long as everything is consensual and no harm is being brought upon anyone else, then by all means, live however you want, because that's what matters. That's what we should be standing for and fighting for. Like, that really is, that's like the core of this channel. That's the core of like what I want to do with my advocacy, is to like just try to promote that as much as possible. Whatever aids freedom of expression is something that should be fought for every single time.
Call bullshit.
Then in August 2017, she made a video responding to Neon Fiona's video about dating preferences. Fiona is Riley Dennis's girlfriend. Now, I don't have a problem with most of what Arielle is saying. Genital preferences matter to a lot of people, sure. You're not transphobic because you don't want to date a trans person, sure. I personally found Riley's original video to be a bit guilt-trippy, but not necessarily rapey. Even then, she wasn't full turf in this video. If you want to see full turf Arielle, it happens later in her videos after collaborating with right-wing trans YouTubers, and it's on her Twitter.
Do you mean right-wing YouTubers like Blair White and Rose of Dawn, who I absolutely adore? Again, sorry, not sorry. These are people that I think are rational, and I will continue to follow.
Hey, remember what we said about going mask off? If you actually think people like Blair White and Rose of Dawn are quote-unquote rational, just come out and say you're a grifter. Just come out and say you're a bigot, because this is what those people are. You are not rational. You are jumping on the bandwagon of bigoted stereotypes. You're jumping on the bandwagon of transphobia, of sexism, of traditionalism that only serves to, guess what? Harm you too. Do you not realize, Arielle, that a lot of these things you're standing for come from groups of people who want to see you back in the kitchen? They want to see you turned into nothing more than something to breed. Do you not understand this? Because these two names you just named are people who, even if they don't openly advocate for it, they associate with people who do. And in my mind, association is everything. If you associate with certain people, you don't call them out, and you repeatedly praise them, I'm going to start being very suspect with the things you say. And I'm going to start being a little extra critical when you try to say things of like, well, I'm not bigoted. And it's like, well, if you're not bigoted, why are you not holding bigoted people accountable? Why are you sitting here praising them? Why are you trying to act like they're your heroes or something? There's something a little off there. And people have a right to be suspicious of you when they point these things out. When they see these contradictions in what you're saying, when they know about the people you're allying yourself with, and they see how often you defend them and you refuse to call them out for things that you know are harming people like me and are harming cis women like you. You should know better than that. And the fact that you refuse to take responsibility for your actions, the fact that you refuse to be responsible with the people that you associate with yourself, the fact that you refuse to think about how what you're doing is going to bring harm on other people, and the fact that you're going to sit there on your little high horse and being like, well, I think these people are rational. I think these people are great. Why are you calling me out? How about you stop being critical of me? Like, I'm sorry, but that makes you a terrible human being. If you are aware that your actions are bringing harm on other people and you refuse to change your ways because your head is so far up your own ass and your ego is so inflated that it's almost as big as like Donald Trump's, I have no respect for you. And I'm not sorry for that, because you are not being responsible with your platform. You are not advocating for good causes. And guess what? You're not advocating for queer issues. You're not advocating for our rights. If there are things you say that actively undermine trans rights, that actively undermine the ability of cis women, of trans women, of femme people in general to live however they want and not have these cultural stereotypes hanging over them 24/7. If you're going to say things that imply that certain freedoms of expression are wrong and you continue doing them, and then you get mad when people like myself and others look at you and say, you do understand that these are incredibly bigoted, backward things you're saying. If you're actually going to have the audacity to look at us and say that we're the irrational woke ones, when we're literally, all we're doing is we're pointing out what you're doing. We're looking at what you're doing and we're saying why it's harmful. You're just a terrible human being. And I don't use language like this very often, but it's behavior like that right there. That's just, it's unacceptable, you know? And someone with a platform of 666,000 subscribers should know better than this. But doesn't surprise me. This is how most grifters are the same. Once you start getting that cash flow, once you see your subscriber count start to rise, once you start getting those guest spots on Dave Rubin's show, on Steven Crowder, once you get all that fame, you know, everything else just goes out the window. So tell me, Arielle, what do you actually stand for? What kind of substance do you actually have as a person and with your own morals? Because I feel like if you were to open up and tell us, that side of yourself would finally come out. And you'd admit you don't really like trans women all that much. You don't like that we point out that, hey, we're not saying that certain genital preferences are transphobic, but if a cis man is dating a trans woman and he's into the femme body, he's into the femme secondary sex characteristics, if this trans woman has all of that, and she is the person, the type of person that he's attracted to, but the only reason he chooses not to date her is because she's trans. The only reason he doesn't want to be associated with her is her identity. That, by itself, is transphobic because it means that he doesn't see you as a real woman for your identity alone. That is transphobic. It's okay to have specific genital preferences. What's not okay is to look at a trans person and say, I'm not into them because I don't see them as what they identify as. That is transphobia. and this is off topic, but you and one other YouTuber have turned me into a baby anarcho-communist, so thanks for bringing me out of my tentative socialism. Listen, this is what I'm here for. I am all about burning down the hierarchical structures of society and bringing humanity back to a more communal way of living, because I think that's what matters more than anything else. I think people should be free to live how they want. They shouldn't be oppressed, discriminated against, simply for the circumstances of their birth. They shouldn't be oppressed, period. We should be able to live in a manner where everyone has the same potential, where everyone has the ability to be who they want, and they aren't held back from their true potential. Like, you should be able to do whatever brings you happiness. You should be able to do whatever work you want to do, and that work should be just as valued as anyone else's. There shouldn't be any governmental structures that prevent society from functioning for us. I don't like the idea of one big national government anyways, so... But I'm happy I could help. Like, I'm still learning a lot about anarcho-communism myself, but out of every ideology I've found today, it's definitely the one I'm most comfortable with. Let's finish this video up real quick, shall we?
Videos with them.
In February 2018, Arielle collaborated with Blair White. Right off the bat, this is awful. From the LGBT history revisionism to them acting like the conversation on genital preferences never ends. She uses the tired ass, but I have trans friends argument. You can still be prejudiced against a group of people and still have friends of that group.
Remember what I said about you can still be bisexual and biphobic? Correct.
Tag wrong kind of trans.
Well, she doesn't have to like dick. Facts don't care about her feelings. Many trans women report that their genitals change with HRT, so there is a difference between cis people's genitals and trans people's genitals. What's with transphobia and ignoring science? Science doesn't care about your feelings. To be fair to Arielle, I will agree that women's sexuality is a lot more policed than men's, and it's okay to have genital preferences, and nobody should be pushing their preferences on others. These Tumblr SJWs are saying some insensitive stuff, but they're not trans people as a whole.
Yeah, and it's those SJWs that these videos are in response to. Also, I feel like over the years, I've drastically changed the way that I say things to be more inclusive and more aware of trans people and their feelings. And you know what? Now I'm feeling like it's okay to ask you guys to do the same. Can you all do me a big favor and stop saying genital preferences? I've also said this in multiple videos. It's not a preference, it's a sexual orientation, and the terminology can be
Are sexual orientation and preference not the same thing on a foundational level? I'm just saying. You're trying to separate those two. Some lesbians are fine with, yeah, no, absolutely. It is different, but you're definitely right about that. That it's like, well, some lesbians are into trans women. That doesn't mean they're not lesbians. Doesn't take away from their sexuality. Doesn't mean that their experience is any less real. You know, it's just a way to very subtly bring transphobia in and be like, well, if you're a lesbian and you're into trans women, you're not actually a lesbian, right? And it's like, no, they're still a lesbian because trans women are women. If a woman is into a woman, she's a lesbian. There's no arguing outside of that. But again, she's trying to make it seem that like if someone is into a trans woman, then say it's a masked person and we say, okay, here's one masked person with a trans woman, and here's one masked person with a cis woman. They're trying to say that the relationship between the two of them is different. That one is straight, but the other is not. And the only reason for that is because one person might have different secondary sex characteristics than the other, and that's it. There is no other difference. What is that, comrades? That we seem to be picking up on. Oh, that's right. It's transphobia. How could I possibly, being a woman? I really guess they move in. I wouldn't say that being a woman doesn't mean anything. I think there are things that even if it's just like your inner experiences with yourself, there are certain things that bring meaning to the term woman. The idea that anyone can be anything is actually something. I think it depends on what you mean when you say that. Anyone can be anything. Yes, people can identify as anything, but you have to be careful that whenever you say anyone can identify as anything, that you're not delegitimizing trans people's experiences by essentially making it seem like surface level. By saying that, well, anyone can be anything, that it kind of implies that there are people identifying as things on a whim, that there's nothing more like intrinsic to them. There's not some like deeper connection to themselves. You have to be really careful how you say that, because I've recognized firsthand whenever people try to use that against me, they try to drive a wedge between my experiences and like what I am. And again, it's just one of those things where like you have to be responsible with your words, and a lot of times she's not responsible with her words. You have to be very careful when you say certain things that there aren't kind of secondary meanings that could unintentionally harm people like you, that could harm a certain cause, and you don't realize that just by saying that you are bringing harm on certain people. It's just being responsible with your words, and I think regardless of like which group you're a part of, it's something you have to really focus on. You know, regardless if like you're trans, if you're an atheist, if you're an anarchist, if you're cis, just things like that. I think you do have to be cautious with that. You know, I think part of the meaning of like anyone can be anything, I don't disagree with, because I don't think there should be any barriers on what people are allowed to identify as and what they're not allowed to identify as. I think when you start getting into that, you do get into like really problematic territory. But also be careful that by lifting those barriers, you're not taking away from the realness of trans people's experiences. It's definitely, again, we're getting back into nuance, and it's a very fine line that you have to walk. But I think if you know, you're careful with it, you talk to other people, you know, you figure it out.
A very easy way to make people that are monosexual seem bigoted when it's just their sexual orientation.
2019, new year, still being transphobic. In a video that she made with a trans man named Blake, she claims that a study shows that being trans makes students more popular and protected by schools, which she never provides a link to the study.
So there was a study recently about a study in high schools about how females who previously identified as lesbian or bisexual are now identifying as trans. It showed that transitioning, number one, increased the students' popularity, and also, this is even more important in my opinion, offered greater protection from harassments, you know, according to teachers and like law enforcement. Teachers were more concerned about anti-trans bullying than bullying that was anti-gay. I will have a link to.
I'm sorry, being trans protects you from harassment? Are you being serious right now? You can't actually seriously think that. It doesn't matter what a study says. Saying that teachers are more concerned about a trans person's well-being, that means the teachers are aware that there is increased harassment against trans people, and they're more concerned about them because they know that there is a greater chance of that person being bullied, assaulted, or killed. That doesn't mean they're more protected from harassment. It simply means that there's more of an awareness of the way that trans people tend to be treated. What? I used to go to a country school. I was harassed constantly and shit. You know, see, that was my experience. Whenever I did my stream last week about growing up in East Texas, I was very clearly like feminine, and I didn't fit in with cis boys, and I was routinely targeted for that. I was routinely bullied. I was routinely harassed. I was routinely ostracized. I didn't have friends. I stayed inside 24/7. And it was because just by me being myself, I had more of a target on my back than other people who were not trans. Being trans immediately puts like 20 targets on your back that you wouldn't have otherwise. How do we face less harassment? How? That there's no validity to that. Like, no.
To that study below. I'm sorry that I forgot to include it in the first video. Also, every single trans man I've ever spoken to who has physically transitioned has noted that they are taken more seriously. Living as a man is very different than living as a woman. That they have in some ways become more popular, or at least what they say is taken more seriously. I probably said that twice, but you know what? We're gonna say it twice because it's important.
By the end of 2019, she's gone full turf.
But
there's no denying.
Stop talking. But 99.99999% of the time, people do not transition to become more popular. They transition so that way they can feel comfortable in their own skin, which sometimes, here's the thing, you know why they might be more popular? Because when you transition and you're more comfortable with yourself, you're more confident, which means you have more friends and you're more able to be yourself. Maybe that's why they're more popular. People do not transition for status. They don't transition just because like they think it'll get them more friends. They do it because they have this immense pain of not being able to be themselves. They withdraw from other people and they finally reach a breaking point where they're like, I don't want to be like that anymore. So they choose to transition and embrace themselves. And then their confidence just explodes forth. They're able to socialize like they want to, which guess what? A lot of times brings more friends in, which means they're more confident, which means they're more popular. That's how that cycle usually happens, because that's how it happened for me. It's not status. It's for your own wellness.
Denying it, so I'm going to quickly go through this arc. Eventually, she gets to a point where half her videos are Blair White, the transgenders are crazy type videos, where she sensationalizes everything and props up respectability politics and polices the way other LGBT people act. She's a fake ally. I don't want to sound like a broken record like her, so I'll let her words speak for themselves.
Are half of my videos about these trans people are crazy? Or are they videos of how horrible gender ideology has become and how it affects females and women? A person named Josie Smith, who raped 15 children, getting released because they are a woman and on estrogen and are deemed no longer a threat. Yes, trans people can be evil.
Yeah, no, I did denounce Blair White earlier. I don't have respect for her. In my eyes, she's another grifter. She's tried to push the narrative that non-binary people are not trans because their experiences are different. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. If you were assigned one gender at birth and you later identify as something else, that means you're trans. By definition, that is what being trans is. Non-binary people and binary trans people like myself are all trans. We are all under the trans umbrella. But she tries to make these claims that like non-binary people are not actually trans. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but they are. Just because they oftentimes don't go through the same transition process that like binary trans people go through, it doesn't mean they're any less trans. They're still trans. It's just the way that they came about the process of understanding themselves and how they go about actually embracing their identity is different. I thought trans people stood together, support each other. Trans people should stand together and support each other, but what Blair White is doing is actively harming our movements. And a lot of times she tends to break apart the community. No, she absolutely does. Her really harmful rhetoric, her constant non-binary phobia, her even falling into like more traditionalist, like classic conservative thinking, it does actively bring harm to us. And it's one of those things where like people like Vosh and other streamers have tried to like talk to her and be like you do understand that what you're saying is really problematic. And like they're not doing it in a way to attack her, but they're just trying to bring that to her attention. But every single time she resists. And there's only so far I think some of us should go in trying to like bring people over from the other side. I think there comes a point where you need to work with what you have. You need to bring the people in that you know you can reach, and then go from there. Maybe down the road Blair White will come around. At this point, I doubt it. It's like Milo who said gay people should stay in the closet. No, that's actually kind of the same thing. It's like, just because you're trans does not automatically mean that you're going to be fully supportive of trans rights. It doesn't automatically mean that you're going to become more like progressive. It doesn't mean you're going to go to the left. Just because you embrace this identity doesn't mean you are automatically in favor of progressive rights. But what we have to do is we have to, over time, build that movement. It's like with trying to bring an anarchist society into existence, with trying to build a true workers' nation, with trying to move past capitalism into like a post-capitalist society. All of these things take time, and it takes a lot of legwork. And it doesn't mean that we need to leave people behind, but it means that we need to take the most willing people. We need to reach who we can, make that the vanguard of our revolution, and then over time, let our efforts and let our example be what brings people in. And I think that's what we need to do with Blair White at this point. We're not saying that she's just abandoned forever, because I don't believe in abandoning people forever. I'm completely against that. But I think when it comes to bringing someone over to your side, it needs to be something that's of their own volition. The decision needs to be left with them. And if they choose not to join, that's their choice, and we shouldn't try to argue with them after that. If they choose to join us, great. We'll be more than happy to have them. But I think that's the responsible thing to do, where you're not excommunicating them, but you're allowing them the freedom to essentially associate with whomever and whatever they want. I think it's the healthiest thing for us.
Yes, I blame individual trans people, but I also think the trans umbrella and gender ideology in today's world has become extremely hurtful to people who are female and who...
My brain, it hurts. Hang on. I need a drink. Okay. The trans umbrella is hurtful to people who are female. Guess what? Some trans people are female. How is acknowledging trans people bringing harm to people who identify as female? Also, I hate the term female. I don't know if anyone else does, but I don't like that term. How is it harmful? How? You're acting like us recognizing the realness of like trans women, again, is somehow harmful to people who are female. How? You say these things, but you do not provide evidence for how what you're saying is real. You cannot just say things and then move on. I mean, you do it all the time, so like I'm not saying you can't, but like it's not good to do that thing.
Present as women. Okay. Also talked about that in multiple videos and will continue to. I think it's really easy to show a few of my recent videos on screen and tell people that all I do is talk about trans people. I don't think I'm speaking over trans people by sharing how gender politics affects me as a woman. The emails, the Facebook messages, the tweets from young women who feel demonized and ostracized just for being basic, boring lesbians. Yes, I talk to trans people about their genitals. I see this point an awful lot. No, I'm not saying it's trans people's fault that female lesbian sexual orientations aren't being taken seriously. Again, it's the ridiculous ideology that comes from the gender extremists or trans umbrella ideology people. In my
Is there a reason you are putting trans and gender extremist next to one another? I'll let y'all put that one together. It's kind of dehumanizing because it's a clerical term. No, absolutely. It's like, I've never liked the term to begin with. It's why if I ever call myself a human being, I do HUMXN instead of like human. It's something where like I feel more comfortable. What's a gender extremist? So what a gender extremist is this is another transphobic dog whistle that a lot of conservative people tend to use to say that people who are trying to redefine the boundaries of gender are gender extremists, because somehow, in a way, if they redefine gender, it will destroy certain meanings. The grift is heavy. No, that's exactly what it is. Is they're basically saying that the acceptance of trans people is extremism. That if you look at someone like myself and you accept me as a woman, that means that both I and you are now extremists, because you see me as a human being and you see me as valid in my existence. That's basically what that means.
Experience, the majority of the time the word TERF is used is to demonize anybody
Hello,
who disagrees
Wings of
with
Joe
the
Biden Dementia. I
subset
love your
of the trans
username.
community or the queer activism community. There's a website called TERF is a Slur. I suggest you guys check it out. I'll have it linked in the description below. It shows how ridiculous people can be. Yes.
Oh, y'all are seeing this, right? Remember whenever I said, I was like, I'm not going to say Arielle is a TERF, but I'm just going to let her words speak louder? Let me circle around this just a few more times. You see that, right? TERF is a slur. Arielle's probably a TERF confirmed. What's extreme about seeing you as a woman? No, Mew Mew Madness is correct. There's nothing extreme about it, according to us, because we support equal rights. We support trans rights. We understand that trans people are what they identify as. Their experience is real. They should be acknowledged as what they are. Conservatives don't want that, because their ideology is pinned into repression. It is hung up on completely outdated norms that existed like 50, 60 years ago, but have long since been left behind. But conservatism, its Achilles heel is that it's meant to keep things the way they are. So they're completely unable to move with the times. They're unable to move with the progression of science, with the progression of how people understand gender, with how people understand the human mind, with how people understand all kinds of things. Conservatism prevents you from being able to move forward with those progressions, because there's something about the way things used to be where if you lose that, then somehow you lose society. They're scared of losing these old norms because they're afraid that like everything will fall apart without them. But what will fall apart is their old understanding of the world. Society will actually become stronger because we'll become closer together. But propaganda, misinformation, older generations, all of these beliefs have convinced them that a lot, like if you hear Christians, like very far-right evangelicals saying that like disasters happen because gay people, like they literally believe that like my existence will bring about the end of the world. But yeah, this whole TERF is a slur thing. I'm sorry, TERF's not a slur, it's a descriptor. It's the same thing with cis. It's the same thing with trans. Trans is a descriptor. Cis is a descriptor. TERF is a descriptor. These are not slurs. If you are a trans exclusionary feminist, you are a TERF. If you look at trans women and you think they don't deserve the same rights as you do, you're a TERF. Isn't it funny how that works?
It shows how ridiculous people can be. Yes, a majority of the time TERF is used to silence women or silence anyone for not going along with the gender ideology that these far left progressives are claiming.
See, this is the same thing that conservatives try to use whenever, so I'm a part of the General Strike 2020 movement right now, and there are a lot of people saying like kill landlords and things like this. It's the same thing where conservatives will use those cases right there, those very minor cases that are not the majority. How often do we have to bring this up? They're painting the minority as being the majority. that just because there are a few bad actors in a bunch, that it means all of them are bad. That's exactly what they are trying to get across here, is that because there are certain people who, yes, maybe they do take things too far. Maybe they do kind of regress into threatening murder and things like that, which personally I am not okay with in any case. They use that against us. And this is why I often try to tell people, like people in the trans community, or even anti-fascist advocates, be very careful with your activism, that you don't do anything that will backfire and further marginalize us and make it harder for us to gain any ground in society, to gain any ground as far as rights. Be sure that everything you're doing, you don't bring more harm than good. It's an incredibly important thing to remember, because Arielle is taking one of those instances and she's turning it on us. And she's trying to make it seem that, like, it's basically what SJWs back in, like, 2012, 2013 did, where they would show, like, the really extreme, examples of, like, the SJWs, like, the people who would scream at, like, the professors, the woman with the red hair who was, like, screaming in people's faces. Like, they're still running, like, with that 6-7 years later, and acting as if there hasn't been more awareness of the trans community since then. That, like, it's still exactly like that. That people still see us that way, even though they don't, which is why she has to resort to grifting, because eventually the grift is going to run out and the vast majority of the population is going to realize that it's nothing but transphobia, that she's just lying, that she's misinterpreting and totally, like, miscontextualizing, like, what trans people are and what they stand for. All to further her own agenda. And this is exactly what she's doing right here. She's calling us extremists because one person decided to post that sign, and all of a sudden she's like, whoops, I guess they're all like that. I guess the trans agenda is super dangerous. Why are we giving these people rights? This is how it progresses every time.
Is correct and the most woke. When people are literally spray painting the word TERF and bigot on rape relief centers for females, claiming transphobia, trashing.
Okay, but it depends on if these places are rejecting trans women. I don't know if y'all heard this story, but a few years ago, there was a Salvation Army shelter that allowed a trans woman to die outside the shelter because she froze to death. They allowed that to happen because they didn't see that trans woman as a woman, and she died in the cold when they could have let her in. Maybe consider there's a reason why these people are painting this on there. What are these sinners doing? Who are they allowing? Who are they not allowing? What are their policies? If you just show this picture and you use the term of, like, look what they're doing to rape centers. Look what they're doing to these places that are so good for women. How could they do this? She's deliberately obfuscating the actual facts of what happened to, again, make it seem as if we are extreme, we are violence, we call everyone TERF, we damage property. She's ignoring the reality of what could actually be happening. The shittiest things get projected the most. No, that's exactly it. The worst characteristics of people within a certain movement are blown up to large scale and treated as the reality. Treated as, like, what people like myself actually are, when, like, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Getting it shut down. I find it quite ironic how gender rights activists allegedly claim, to be giving others a voice and make safe space. Yet their tactics literally are bullying and silencing the majority of the world. I've been called a TERF. You know what? I've lost count at this point.
Well, okay. Is the majority of the world transphobic? Does the majority of the world not believe that trans women are women? That's something I have to ask. You're saying that the majority of the world would agree with your views, but I feel like if you look at any statistics and you look at the amount of people who support trans rights, or who at the very least understand that we are women, like, they're in much larger number than I think she'd be willing to talk about gender rights activists. Yeah, no, gender rights advocates or activists. It is one of the worst terms I've ever heard. I'm trans and it scares me how some people are easily led towards hate. No, see, that's the thing, is the path towards hate, like the path to the dark side, is one that you fall into very easily. And these people are aware of this, and they take advantage of you because they recognize if they can play on these very primal fears, if they can make you scared of other human beings for no other reason than they told you to be scared, that they make it seem like your rights are just going to be taken away, that can lead you down the path to hate very quickly if you're not keeping the logic part of your brain open and you're not understanding, like you're not keeping track of what's actually happening. This is how people fall down the alt-right rabbit hole, is they're very slowly taught to other people who are different than them. They're taught to see immigrants. They're taught to see trans people. They're taught to see gay people. They're taught to see all different types of people as the other, as something that doesn't fit within societal norms, something that threatens the fabric of society. And over time, they lead you from merely being wary of these people to very slowly developing actual, real hatred for them. And it's all by design, because they recognize if they can rope you in, they can use you to further their own agenda, which is what people on the right do. It's what, even if she's not actively aware of what she's doing, people like Blair White, Arielle Scarcella, all of them, this is absolutely something they do.
But I asked you guys on Twitter, what's the most ridiculous thing you've been called TERF for? Here are some of your answers, and I feel like these things, in my opinion, are...
Now, I will say this. I do think that some people use the term TERF a little bit too freely. I do think there are cases where people use the term TERF when they shouldn't. I do agree with that, but I think Arielle and I would disagree about where the boundaries are. It's like a lot of terms. There's some people that will use this not derogatory term, because TERF is not derogatory, but they'll use actual terms that are derogatory, not because the person fits the typical attributes of that term, but it's more just because it's a term to throw at people. It's like whenever conservatives call anything they don't like communism or socialism, it's the exact same thing. It's just this catch-all term where it's something they don't like, therefore it's bad, therefore it's this. And I do think that regardless of what you believe, everyone can fall into that habit. Everyone can fall into inappropriately or at least mistakenly using terms and not realizing that by doing so, you are harming the people who are rightfully using that term. So people who use the term TERF and they are describing a cis woman who will not fight for trans rights because she doesn't see trans women as women, but she'll fight for the rights of cis women, that's a TERF. So that's kind of rightfully using that term. But no, I think there are people who do either deliberately misuse terms or unintentionally misuse terms because they're not aware of the stigma around doing so. This does happen. This is a problem for everyone. None of us are perfect, and it's something to be aware of. It really is. Don't use terms, especially loaded terms like this. Do not use those on a whim, because if people hear you using that on a whim, they're going to use that against you and be like, wow, I guess y'all really do just like calling everyone a TERF, don't you? This is why you have to be mindful with your words.
Issues that need to be taken more seriously.
Sydney is famous for its gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, which is its pride event. Arielle was supposed to be on a panel at an official gay and lesbian Mardi Gras event. When people found out, they were upset and petitioned to have her removed from the event. Other panel members left because they didn't want anything to do with her. Pride is supposed to be a safe place for all members of the LGBT community. Arielle is not entitled to be part of the event. They have every right to kick her out. Of course, she acts like a victim and makes it all about her, saying that they got rid of the one female lesbian-focused event.
Correct. I don't have any innate right to be at any event, but literally 2 seconds ago, you just said that Pride is supposed to be a safe space for everybody. What you meant to say was
Pride is not supposed to be a place for bigots and TERFs. If you don't stand for the rights of all queer people, if you don't openly advocate for all queer people, if you aren't mindful of your words, and you actively discriminate against any part of the queer community, then you do not stand for what Pride stands for. And they have every right to remove you for that. I'm sorry, is this hard for us to comprehend? Like, if you don't stand for equal rights, you should not be at an event that is focused on equal rights, because you being there shows a disconnect between the event and what you stand for. And you shouldn't, it's totally fine for them to kick you out. That's fine. Like, is this not the free marketplace of ideas, Arielle? Do you suddenly have a problem whenever certain people have an issue with your views? Do you not like it when some people take away opportunities for you to speak to the public? Is that get under your skin at all? I wonder.
that Pride is a safe space for everybody who agrees with the far left progressive ideology. And
Pride is a space for people who agree with human rights. Pride is not a far left Okay, according to you, it might be far left and radical, but Pride itself is not. It's not radical. It's not this far left extreme thing. Pride literally is something that was built so that way everyone can have the same rights and opportunity in society. Just because, again, the circumstances of your birth were different does not mean that you should automatically be given less than other people because it's something that you can't help. Like, this is why Stonewall happened. Stonewall happened so that people like myself could finally have a fighting chance in society. The two trans women who threw the bricks at Stonewall knew what would happen by doing so, but they knew they had to fight for the generations of trans women after them. How is Pride something that's harmful? How is looking at queer people and saying we should give them rights harmful? You yourself are a lesbian. You're a part of this community. And yet somehow to you, you think that, like, Pride is this extreme thing. What? Is it just because, like, you're okay with lesbians being given rights, but whenever it comes to trans people, I mean, not so much. Are you one of those people who would be like the LGB without the T? Because I feel like you're one of those people. Kind of like the Twitter page that says LGB Alliance and is intentionally excluding the T. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I feel like that's kind of what's going on here.
And if you don't, you should be banned because apparently even my existence to some gender radical people is triggering for them. Just like me being alive.
Would it be mean if I don't entirely disagree? But no, the term of gender critical, like, come on. The whole, like, gender critical feminist, that's what you are. Because you're saying that certain people should not be given the same rights or be taken as seriously as others. By definition, you are gender critical. You are not fighting for true equal rights. You get so hung up on words, but whenever it comes to definitions like this, suddenly you're just like, you're a little bit wibbly-wobbly on them. It's fascinating how the reactionary's brain works. It's like, it's super smooth, but there's just these weird little divots here and there where things just get caught, and then it can't go anywhere. Strange.
Being alive and being in their country was triggering for them.
Her Twitter has turned into left bashing. Then she went on Tim Pool's podcast, and now she's made a video of her coming out as conservative. Let's react.
I don't think it's normal for people to be praised for walking around with shirts that say kill TERFs.
That shirt doesn't say kill TERFs on it. Learn to read. It says I punch TERFs. Killing and punching are two totally different things.
Exactly. Unless you're someone with a very frail bone disorder where you die as soon as you're punched. Hey, Trekkie, how do I mod you? Oh. Comrade Trekkie, welcome to the community. You're my first mod. I have given you the honor. You're a lovely human being, so I'm more than happy to let you do that.
And I wouldn't blame a trans person for proportionally defending themselves against a transphobe.
Yes, two different things, but both aren't literal violence, like accidentally misgendering someone or
This is something I've gotten in spats with people about, of what is the definition of violence. For those who do not know about this, violence is not just a physical act. Violence is anything that actively brings harm to other people. It can be a violent act. It can be words. It can be certain actions that are not physical. All of those things are still violence because they're being done to discriminate against and bring harm to others. So whenever, say you misgender me, that is an act that delegitimizes my existence from your perspective. You are trying to delegitimize me. So because it brings harm to my mental state, misgendering is literal violence. Again, we're going by the definition of these things. And also misgendering is something that can lead to physical violence. So say there's a trans person walking down the street and there are two trans folks walking towards them. It can start with misgendering, which is one form of violence, and then it can lead to physical assault, which is another form of violence. But both of those things are violence. It doesn't just have to be a physical act. And this is one thing, I've heard this constantly, not just from like right-wing people on Twitter, but also all over YouTube, is they absolutely refuse to budge when you show them a dictionary definition of violence that shows that is more than just a physical act. And they're like, well, but which dictionary did you use? I actually had a debate with someone who said they wanted me to use the Oxford Dictionary. So I showed them the Oxford Dictionary definition, and lo and behold, a little ways down the definitions of violence, anything that brings harm to other people. I presented it to them. They stared at me. And that conversation ended right there. He was banned on my channel and only banned chuds. See, this is actually, I'm still very much new to the whole culture of like chuds and things like that. So I'm grateful to have a comrade like you. Thank you for being here and educating and enlightening me. I absolutely appreciate it. We have 2 minutes. Let's wrap this up and then finish for the night.
talking about biological sex, right?
I'm sorry, was Arielle even part of the left to begin with? Oh, and good for you. I don't care.
I don't care, but I literally just spent hours compiling all the bad things you've ever said in the 10 years of your existence and then made a 41-minute response video to it, but I don't care. When we praise news stories like this that make absolutely no sense and do nothing for our movement or for people understanding us.
What seems to be the problem with the headline? It's accurate, and they're not hurting anyone.
Female sperm donor. Female.
If they identify as female, they're female. Wait. I'm sorry. Do you not like the idea of a femme person who produces sperm? Is there something where you just like, ugh, like you get really like icky and like it just makes your skin crawl? The idea that there could be any woman out there who produces sperm because sperm means man, right? No, if you actually looked at third grade biology, you would know that sperm comes from a secondary sex organ, but that secondary sex organ doesn't determine who you are. So, hey, Arielle, hey, I'm sorry if this just makes your brain explode from rage, but did you know that masked people can have a uterus? Did you know that? Wait. I'm sorry. This is a lot for you. I'm sorry. But my pleasure. Oh, Trekkie. You're the best. Thank you. Listen, it's a little like validating things like that. Like, please shower me with that. I will shamelessly take compliments. I'm not kidding. I have no shame. It makes me feel good. So whatever. A trans woman donating sperm based. Oh, it's based as fuck. Yeah. Wait, but I got something else for you. Did you know that people can be non-binary and or gender non-conforming and have all kinds of secondary sex characteristics? It's wait. It's almost like gender norms are bullshit. And maybe we shouldn't look between people's legs and be like, you're a boy or you're a girl. Maybe we should get rid of that way of thinking, because it always seems to like do more harm than good. Am I really a radical for thinking that? I mean, I don't know.
Sperm donor.
As for LGBT acceptance being down, are you sure it's what you call trans-trenders' fault? Or is it the fact that America has a far-right president who emboldens hateful people? Stop victim-blaming LGBT people.
Trump was the first president to enter into the office as pro-LGBT. First Republican to ever be pro-gay.
Obama and same-sex marriage? What about the transgender military ban? Oh my god, I cannot with these people. Like, this is, okay. You know what's actually really unnerving about this? This is the I exist and I'm, yes, Trekkie, you exist and you are real. Hey, you are a real person. You are a very real person and you are a lovely person. And no one can take that away from you. No one can ever take your experience of yourself away. You are who you are and you are lovely. And that's that. There should never be any other argument. Okay. The argument she just used, where she said Trump was the first person to fight for LGBTQ rights or the first American president, the trans woman I argued with in Pioneer Square was saying the same thing. She was screaming this through a megaphone that Trump was the first president to truly fight for all queer people's rights. And as soon as I told her, hey, what about the military ban? She walked away and she didn't say another word to me. Like, how can you say that, good night, everyone. Hey, good night. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you. Hopefully you will stay along for the ride for more streams. I don't have like a steady schedule yet, but I'm hoping as time goes on, I'll be able to develop a bit more of like a usual schedule. But it's just complete denial of reality. When has Trump ever willingly, of his own volition, supported our rights? Can you point me to any particular case? Because I don't think you do it. Like, just look at Mike Pence. Look at Mike Pence and look who he's associated with. Are you really going to sit here and tell me that these people actually care about my rights? Because, like, I don't think so.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me.
Number one, hateful foreign ideology. You wouldn't happen to be like using that as a dog whistle to discriminate against Muslims, would ya? Because I'm sure that wouldn't be like you at all to do something like that. I would never guess that of you. But hey, Arielle, have you ever considered that whenever someone's running for public office, that they sometimes say things because people want to hear them? Did you ever consider that maybe sometimes they don't actually mean what they're saying, they're just doing it to gain your support? So whenever Trump said this during the campaign, where did he turn his words into action? Because I'm having a really hard time remembering, like, specific cases where he actually wrote legislation that basically gave us a better standing in society, that gave us equal rights, that reduced discrimination by a significant degree. Because it never happens, as far as I can tell. But grifter's gonna grift.
He has also launched a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality within the UN. He's appointed quite...
Where? Can you tell me where? Please. Do you have these stats? Did he willingly do it? Who did he work with? What does the actual bill itself say? If there is a bill, what are the details? You cannot just say things and expect us to take you at your word. What is the nuance?
Quite a few gay men to work with him. He wants to make PrEP available to all gay and bisexual men without insurance. But no, of course, the White House is to blame. The White House is to blame for the rise in the anti-LGBT groups. I mean, look at...
No shit, Sherlock. Our current White House is responsible for the rise of all kinds of anti-LGBTQ groups. Look how emboldened far-right evangelicals are nowadays. Look how emboldened the people are who are outright attacking Planned Parenthood facilities. Look how emboldened people are becoming whenever they enact legislation that makes puberty blockers legal, that makes it illegal to have any treatment whatsoever for trans youth, that tries to strip away our ability to update our IDs, that tries to make it so that we can't update our passports, that tries to make it so that way we can't even receive medical care, that if we go to the doctor, they can look at us and realize we're trans and be like, oh, I actually don't want to take care of you because we're trans. All of this is the result of this president's extremely toxic, queerphobic rhetoric. This has been a part of our government since the 80s, whenever Reagan basically genocided gay people out of existence. Like, not all of them, obviously, but through AIDS, he allowed thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in the LGBTQ community to die because he hated them. And that mindset is still ingrained in their party. The idea that this administration, because Trump is so much like those people, that somehow his being there, I'm getting emotional over this because I've had so many experiences with this. For you to actually say something like that and you be in the queer community yourself, how are we not supposed to see you as a traitor of some kind? Honestly.
All the good we've been doing lately. All that banging on the windows, punching 60-year-old women, screaming at people who disagree with us, refusing to have conversations, name-calling new genders of the...
Refusing to have conversations and name-calling? You are one to talk about refusing to have conversations and name-calling. You should not be leveling that claim against people like myself who pride themselves on having conversations, on having open, honest dialogues with people who think differently than me, because I see value in discourse. I see value in conversations. I see value in the exchanging of ideas, regardless of how far apart we are ideologically, because there's always a chance that we may be able to plant that seed that helps them come over to us. You never know. But the people who are calling names, who are committing violent acts, are the extreme minority. Because everything I have seen since I became politically active tells me that the further right you go, the less willing you are to accept people who are different than you. The less willing you are to actually have a conversation and be critical about your own personal beliefs and the way you see others. almost every single time that has been my experience. So how dare you try to level that kind of claim against me? I wholly renounce that. I'm trying to build a career based off of discussion, based off of advocacy, based off of honest and open discourse. This is what leftists like myself are fighting for. This whole idea, I wonder almost with Arielle if it's like even her idea of us is based on propaganda. I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't humanize her too much.
Weak anger directed at celebrities and canceling anyone who disagrees with your rhetoric. So enough with all of that. I just wanted to let people know officially where I stood on certain issues. Personally, I don't think I'm biphobic. In fact, I actually usually find bisexual women more attractive because they are typically more feminine presenting, and I like that. I'm not racist, again.
Saying that biphobic women are more feminine presenting could be seen as a little dig at trans people, but
I don't know where that claim even comes from. No one ever has any valid, proof to back that up. I don't think I'm transphobic, and yes, I am legitimately an actual lesbian. I hope that cleared up a few things about me. Please let me know in the
I don't care. Okay. How are we doing, everyone? Talk to me. We have been talking for 2.5 hours, and y'all are still here. Thank you so much. Like, just things like this. This is why I appreciate y'all. I really appreciate you coming here and, like, making this with me. Because it's y'all and me both that really make this what it is. And I appreciate you sticking here. I support my comrades too, Trekkie, and I will always do the same for you. You know that. But isn't it, to wrap things up, isn't it fascinating that in a video where she said she was going to set the truth straight, she was going to tell us her true nature, she was going to debunk all of the lies that have been thrown against her and show that she's not the bigoted, transphobic grifter that everyone seems to say that she is. She's going to present us with a plethora of evidence that showed us she's truly the golden child of the LGBTQ community, that she's just an absolute savior for lesbian rights, and she would never say or do anything that could be construed as being for her own gain or furthering the agenda of people on the right and or grifters. I'm sure she wouldn't do that. Oh wait, that's what she's been doing for most of her career. How could I have been so mistaken? But again, this is just how grifters work. They will do everything they can to deflect from these claims, but not actually change their behavior to the point where we have reasonable doubts, where we have maybe enough evidence to think, well, I mean, maybe they're right, maybe they're telling the truth. Grifters more like cringesters. Oh! I love that. That's so good. But this is just how they work. Anything that brings you the dollar bills, y'all, they will happily sell their souls to Donald Trump. It's disgusting. But yeah, these are my thoughts on Arielle Scarcella. Thank y'all for joining me in my first stream in my new casa. Also, I'm super excited because I ordered a tapestry from a site called Trippy Tapestry that I'm going to be putting on this wall back here. It's going to be art of a skull that's like all glitched out, and that's going to be the new official background for my videos. And I can't tell you how excited I am for this. What I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up a spot back here to shoot my videos. Where I'm going to have a chair and my tripod set up, and I'll shoot directly against the backdrop. And then when I stream and edit, I'll do it here. So that way there's a little differentiation between like streams and videos. Like, it's just the visual thing. It's like a clear distinction between the two. And like, I feel like that's important. But yeah. Wait, boop, 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 boop. All right, another person banned. We're good. Let me pull the chat out with just so I can get this little thing out of the way. All right, y'all. It is, what time is it even? It is 10:38 my time. I have work at 8 in the morning, so I'm going to hop off of here for now. But hey, if you're looking for raids, you should raid Ikura Rules. I actually don't know who that is, but I'm going to set it aside for later. Thank you. Iko Rules. All right. Y'all, I love you. Thank you for joining me for this ride. I will be back for many, many more. Don't you worry. But until then, have a lovely night, y'all. Take care. Stay safe. Thank y'all for existing. Listen, I am just here to give my love to you. I'm here to give y'all everything I've learned, but you gotta rate us somewhere. So I still don't entirely know how raids work. I'm just gonna be totally honest. But hey, we will get there. It sounds fun. It also, for whatever reason, it makes me think of like something from Overwatch. Maybe it's just me. Okay. Y'all have a good night, okay? I will see y'all soon. Take care of each other. Be good. Mostly. And I'll see y'all soon. Bye.